my name is Maggie. I do have a PowerPoint that goes with this presentation, so I'll share my screen in a second. But I always like to recommend that you guys, if you're comfortable, you turn on your video, because I think it helps us all engage more and kind of see each other, like if we were in a real workshop in person. And it helps everyone stay more engaged in the talk a little bit. Also, as we go through tonight, at any point, feel free to unmute if you have a question. There's times where I'll ask you questions and you can feel free to participate. You can also post in the chat, and if you go through that way, then Carrie will read it to me. But you are welcome to ask questions throughout when the idea comes into your head. So this workshop's meant to be a little interactive and playful, and I'll ask you questions, but we'll all be thinking about home or office ergonomics, because we've all been working from home more than ever before for the past year, right? And we were talking with some of you as you guys were coming in, but I'm presuming everyone here has been working from home, or even if you are now retired, but you have a hobby that you've taken up that is keeping you in a seated position. Is that kind of where we're all at? Or does someone have a story that might be different that I need to touch on that you'd like to let us know about, so that we can speak to that as well? Otherwise, I'll presume we're all kind of dealing with that same idea of working from the home office. Okay.
I'm working from home. Basically, I had a small computer desk. All my work is on computer, and I got a chair, but I'm basically working behind my front door.
And right, in like the space you have.
Really, really small, and I'm developing spasms in the QL muscle.
Okay. All right. So I'll try to touch on that too. But if anyone is not familiar with the QL, it's a square muscle in your lower back between your pelvis and your ribs. But all right, let's get started. I'll try to touch on, so those of you who gave me some information about you as we started, and Bobby, that information, we'll try to incorporate that. So I have a small space. I'm starting to have spasms. We are going to touch on some of these things, but let me get this PowerPoint up. All right, so this is our home office ergonomics workshop, and the goal of it is to help you find tools to get more comfortable at work and at home, if home is now your work. But even if you are working out of the office, there's a lot of things we do at home. We sit at the dining room table every night for dinner. We maybe sit on the couch when we're watching TV. We chop vegetables and wash the dishes at the counter. So there's all sorts of times when we're using this space anyway. And we think of the office as our office space, but we work at home in all sorts of ways. So now it's just become that home space is both our office and our home workspace. But what is ergonomics, and how does that relate to the office? If you're not familiar with the term ergonomics, it's really just a matter of looking at the tools you use in your job and make sure they're working best for you. So Carrie mentioned I teach Pilates, so I have all sorts of equipment and boxes and balls and different size stability balls and these things called reformers. That is part of my office, and including a desk and a chair. Typical office job: a chair, desk, computer, mouse, maybe multiple monitors, but these would be your tools. And so the question becomes, are these tools set up to help you work the most comfortably and efficiently and effectively so that you can work without pain or discomfort? Because if your office isn't set up ergonomically and you develop pain, then you're not working as well, which isn't good for you or the company you work for. And if things are set up in a way that makes it not efficient, like you always have to twist to do stuff and it's eating up time in your day in a way that's not functional or healthy, then it's also kind of getting in the way of your tasks, maybe distracting. And so sometimes just the way you lay out a space could be really helpful in making work more efficient and healthy at the same time. So we need to start there. We need to ask ourselves, is our workspace comfortable? And do you have an ergonomically designed desk and chair at home, or are you working with what you've got? And again, you guys can feel free to chat or unmute. And it would be worthwhile, I think, to answer this question. Does anybody feel that their home office is comfortable?
Nobody is saying yes.
Nobody's saying yes. Let me get back. Is anybody finding their home office really uncomfortable?
No, it's not uncomfortable, but it's making do.
It's
with some
making do with what
adjustments.
you have, but you're
Yeah.
not feeling uncomfortable in the space.
Right. Yeah.
Does anybody have, like, did anyone's office get them or they purchase an ergonomically designed desk or chair? Or again, I'm assuming if we don't hear from anyone. Okay, so someone did purchase a chair. I have a comfortable office chair that I purchased myself. Okay, and you're finding it comfortable. That's always great. So that's a great start if you found something that is comfortable for you. This talk, we're going to presume not everybody has that or has done that. And tools and little tricks and ways you can create that for yourself if you didn't get an ergonomic or a new chair. Although if you are thinking you're going to be working from home long term at this point, it might be worth the investment. However, you're going to see variety is a key factor here. So the question is, what does your office look like? Does it look more like you have this chair, or does it look more like my office where you're forced to flip upside down sometimes, where you hang upside down, you have all sorts of instruments to hang from? Because what I will say, it doesn't matter what our job is. If you work in a home office and you have repetitive motions, it's going to make you sore in one way. You know, people often think because I'm a Pilates instructor, I might be the healthiest, but especially now teaching virtually, I'm always looking out to the screen at the same side. Generally, if I'm showing someone an exercise, I always show it on my stronger side because I want it to be shown well to them so that they have the best presentation of it. So I just continue to get one side stronger and the other side continues to get weaker. So whatever job we're in, it asks of us things that aren't perfect for our bodies. We're never going to make our job the perfect space and the perfect position for our body. And that's okay. The body can handle getting out of neutral and getting out of whack and taking on all sorts of different positions. I throw this slide in mostly a little bit to be funny, but I am guessing that most of you are more looking at like an office chair, a dining room chair, you're working from home. And that the reality of your life right now is that, like many of you mentioned, you're either working at a kitchen table or you are sitting at your couch, propping yourself up with your computer. Maybe you've got your computer in your lap and you've got one of those beanbag chairs. Perhaps you're using your bed and you finally found a purpose for all those decorative pillows because you can prop them up and use them. Maybe you've made a makeshift desk or you went to something you had in your garage and you've taken plywood and milk crates and you're making it work. Or perhaps you're in your basement with like no good lighting and you're using like patio furniture that it's about time to move outside and you don't know what's going to come next for you, right? So I think we all kind of made the best of what we had. Maybe, as Bobby mentioned, you're in a really small space and you've made a desk out of this minimal space that you have. And that can be challenging too, because we also can't always allow our home office to take over our whole home, right? Or we're constantly moving all our paperwork here, our computer here, plugging in here and getting in people's ways. So sometimes we are limited to the space we have. But I'm going to guess that without me even telling you, you guys could look at some of these images and you could tell me what would be wrong with what you're seeing here. So again, whether it's through text or you want to unmute, this is me working from my bed, working from my dining room table, and working from my kitchen. And what do you guys notice isn't
Your posture.
my posture? Yep. I'm slouching in all of them. I have no support for my back. My monitor's way down low, so I have to slouch to see it. Yep. Anything else?
I'm kind of leaning to one side on a few of them, on a couple of them, not being straight.
Yeah, maybe I'm leaning over to one side, right? Like if the bed's not totally even.
Bending the neck.
Oh gosh, I look at these and that makes me so uncomfortable, whichever one I'm in, right? That bend in the neck, that's gonna kill me.
Somebody's saying feet not flat on the floor.
Yep, that's a good one. So that picture of me in that bed in particular, my feet dangling, really terrible position. I'm gonna pull on my back, and if I don't notice it at the time, over time, it's gonna create strain in the back. Yep. Anything else you notice? One thing I like to point out here that isn't necessarily. What's that?
Arms. The arms are
Yeah,
not,
what do you notice about the arms?
they're slanted, they're not parallel to the keyboard.
Yeah, and certain ones, they come at a bad angle onto the keyboard, especially that one that it's hard to see, I think, but that one of me in the bed, there's no way my hands are at a good angle to my keyboard there. And right, you don't want a break in your wrist. You want a straight wrist as you come to the keyboard. You don't want to be at your keyboard with the wrist broken. You want your wrist to come to your keyboard nice and straight so that you're not always compressing that wrist in either direction. Yeah, you guys found all the major components. The neck is terrible. The feet aren't touching the floor. I'm slouching and it's ridiculous. One thing we're going to talk about a little bit later is the way I'm using my dining room chair, and I'm sitting on it squared off, and there's better ways to sit on any chair you have. So we'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. The other thing I always like to point out here is the pajamas and bathrobe. So I intentionally took the bad pictures in my pajamas and bathrobe because I can't tell you how much I heard from people how they spent all day in their pajamas. They didn't even put pants on. In fact, I don't know if this is still the case, but mid-COVID, pants sales were way down. People were buying shirts. No one was buying pants because they speculate they actually weren't wearing them. And I do think for our mental health, it's really important to separate our home and work if we're not leaving if there's not a commute to differentiate the two, to take a shower, get dressed, put on some, make ourselves feel like real people. Because especially if you're working from home and you potentially don't have to leave the house all day, or maybe you could go a couple days without leaving the house, you become very isolated and can feel like I haven't even gotten out of my pajamas, which can alter our mental health. Now, everybody's different. If you are Carmela says, I'm still in my PJs, which again is okay. And you can assess your own mental health and be like, it's fine for me. And once in a while, that's also great, right? That is one of the perks, if it is one of the great joys for you that you can be in your PJs. But just think about and ask the question is, am I feeling okay with the choice to be in my pajamas? Or would it give me a pick-me-up to get dressed? If you wear makeup, put on a little makeup, do your hair, get yourself what would normally be presentable for work, if that would feel good for you. All right, any questions so far? All right, one of the reasons we need to stop and consider some of these poor positions is because any of them can lead to pain in the body. And now our body, again, it can take a lot. So if you spend one day in any of the positions I just showed you, you can probably survive it unless you have an injury. But if you are now in those positions day in and day out, it's very often likely to lead to pain. So again, you guys already picked up on all the ergonomic issues in those pictures. You didn't need me to tell you anything. You can look at those pictures and you can assess and you can see for yourself what the issue is. Sometimes it's harder to see that in your own body at your own desk because you don't necessarily have a visual of yourself, but your body gives you a lot of feedback that you can tune into and notice. So the question would be, are you experiencing anything on this list? Neck pain, shoulder soreness, tired eyes, back pain or sciatica? Are your legs or feet falling asleep? Do you have stiffness when you go to stand from sitting? Do you have wrist pain? Do you have pain anything else? Has this remained the same since you've been working? Has it gotten worse? Or have you felt actually better since you've been working from home and you are like, I'm about to get called back into the office and I want to know, how do I keep the relief? Because since I've been at home, I feel better. So again, this is another place where you guys can feel free to unmute or write in the chat, because if every one of you says we have neck pain, I'll speak to that a little bit more. If you're all over the board, we'll work it more broadly. And I will touch on all these issues, but I'll spend more time on what's going on with you guys as a group.
Neck, shoulder, back, and stiffness on standing.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I would agree with stiffness on standing.
Okay. So we have neck, shoulders, back, and we have a number of people with stiffness on standing. And do you feel like that's a new one since you've been at
Oh,
home?
since I've been at home, definitely.
Okay.
Same.
Okay. And for those of you who feel that stiffness on standing, would you say your setup at work was better?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So good. Noticing a change in the body. And that's key. You're aware of it. It's still early on. It's only been a year. So it's not like it's too late to turn it around and try to resolve this so that that stiffness on standing doesn't become regular hip pain or regular back pain. Anyone experiencing something going on other than the neck, shoulders, back, and stiffness on standing?
There's something in the chat. I experience all of it except for the legs and the feet legs and feet falling asleep.
Okay. And the legs and feet is most common if you've got like the dangling feet. So if none of you are experiencing that, you've probably got your feet on the floor, and that's a good sign. All right. Anything off the list that I didn't list, but that you've been experiencing that's new since you've been working from home? So when you think about setting up your office, there's some basic guidelines you can look for, whether you have to make this work at your desk, your counter, that small space. We generally want a 90 degree angle or greater at the elbows, hips, and knees. So I don't want to be on this angle and typing. I want to be at least 90 degrees at the elbow or have my hands lower. So 90 degrees or greater at the elbow. And the same goes for the hip. So you don't want your hips lower than your knees. You want your hips level to your knees, ideally higher than your knees. And that's one of the reasons like an office chair is good, because you can pump it up and get yourself higher. But if you don't have an office chair, you can use more pillows to get your hips higher. And then if to get your hips higher than your knees, your feet would dangle, you could put yoga blocks or a couple books under your feet. But you definitely want 90 degrees or greater at your major joints, elbows, hips, and knees. You don't have to have back support all the time, because if you're sitting, for example, on a stability ball, you're getting a lot of core work and you don't have back support, and it's okay. But if you're going to be sitting in the same chair all day and in the same position, you definitely want support for your back. You don't necessarily want to have to hold your posture up all by itself all day. So again, you can lean back into the support when you need it. You can come forward when you don't. But you definitely want the option of back support if you're going to be sitting for prolonged periods. We talked about the importance of having your feet on the floor or supported by a footrest so you could prop it up. But again, it sounds like all of you are already doing that, given that no one's having like that numbness. You don't want any of those extreme neck positions that were in the first photo of all the kind of errors you can make. In an ideal world, your monitor is level with your eyes. Now, that can be hard to position, and you're going to see even in my good quality photos, that's in some places the one that's the most lacking. But in an ideal world, monitor and eyes are level. You want your shoulders relaxed. So you want to notice if you're stressed at work that you're not holding tension, but also that depending on what your work requires, you're not, I always think of when I was younger and you'd hold the phone on your ear between your shoulder. You don't want to find yourself stuck in repetitive patterns like that at work. You want to notice, can you see your screen? Is the lighting good? If you have to read paperwork besides your screen, are you having to squint to look at things? Is there a glare from the windows in your room? So if you're backlit and you have a glare on your screen, that can become bothersome to the eyes. But also for everyone who's trying to light themselves well for virtual meetings and stuff, everyone tells you to have a window in front of you. But if you're working all day with a window and the sun shining in and hitting your eyes, that can cause discomfort. Even a window from the side where the light kind of grazes your eyelids. So just be aware of how you set up your lighting and are using windows. And you can use curtains to get the sun out of your eyes during the day. Because if you're working through that, that creates an eye strain that I think sometimes we're not even thinking of the eyes necessarily when we think of good office ergonomics and how our lighting is affecting us. And in some ways, that could be better in your home office, because a lot of offices have that above lighting that's just kind of bears down and is not comfortable. And now we can set our lighting and make it dimmer when it needs to be and more comfortable for us. And if you don't have office mates, you can have any lighting you want. But be aware that glare on your screen and good visibility is also a key factor. And then also know variety, variety, variety. So I'm going to talk about all different spaces in the house. If you are able to move from space to space, but none of them can be a perfectly ergonomic space, you're going to be better off than someone who has the most expensive ergonomic chair and desk, but spends 8 hours in the same position. Our body doesn't like to be in the same position. So anyone who's saying, I'm feeling like I'm getting stiffness upon standing, chances are you are spending a long time in the same position, whether you have the perfect chair or not, right? If that's happening more and faster than it did at the office, chances are it's because your hips are level or lower than your knees and you need to get your hips higher. But again, even if you have the perfect chair, if you sit in it for 2 hours without moving, 4 hours without moving, the body's going to start to hurt. And that's because the body is always looking for ways to make life easier for us. So if you sit a lot, the body goes, oh, you know what? The front of her hips, she's sitting, they need to be really tight. Her butt is stretched to sit, so she needs like a really loose, weak glutes. Her back, because the glutes are weak, the back's going to get a little tighter. And then your hips in front are tight. Your glutes aren't that strong. And in fact, it is an issue people are seeing called gluteal atrophy. Because of the amount we sit, our butts are dying. That was happening before COVID. The butt muscle is truly exhausted in Western culture. When you go to stand up, your butt isn't strong enough to get you up to fight the front of your hips that's holding you really tight. So it's really important that you throw in different seated positions, even if you have the best tools. Also, if you're finding stiffness upon standing, water, water, water. Hydration will be really helpful for that. Any questions before we go into showing different spaces and just a lot of ways you can throw in variety within those spaces with the tools you have at home?
There's somebody in the chat who asks, how often should we break to stretch?
That's a tough one. Honestly, at least every 45 minutes in an ideal world, if you're asking me as someone who teaches movement, and if you're asking based on the research. That being said, the reality of work is sometimes actually, especially if you have to do really thoughtful or creative work, you have to get into what's called flow. And if you had to break that up every 45 minutes, you'd never get into flow where you've gotten into the work enough that it's just kind of coming to you, right? So it's not, in many jobs, it's not realistic for me to tell people to get up every 45 minutes, and I know that. If your job allows that, every 45 minutes. If your job doesn't, as frequently as you can. It is not only vital to your ability to have, muscles that are comfortable and a body that isn't in pain, but there are direct links to shortening our lifespan and sitting too much. So whether that's for work or because we come home and sit on the couch. And so the more we break up sitting, the better. Any questions? Okay.
Nothing in the chat.
All right. So I'm going to go kind of room by room here. And again, and you can point out, these are my better examples, but it still looks like I'm in pajamas, but again, I teach fitness, so my clothes often look like pajamas. But again, it's not perfect. My neck here is not perfect. But what I've done is tried to show you that within one space, we can get some variety. So, and it's always a concession. And it's whether, well, do I give the concession this time at my neck and the next time at my elbows? So it's never the same joint always having to deal with the issue. But what I'd like to point out here is I'm basically in the same position in my bed. I am using pillows for back support, but also I'm sitting on a pillow to get my hips higher than my knees, even in sitting. I need to prop up my monitor. It should be higher for my neck, but if I go any higher, my elbows will have less than a 90-degree angle. But I've also changed one thing here. I go from sitting cross-legged to having one leg out. You could do both legs out straight. That's more with the pillows in between, more likely to put strain on your back. But cross-legged or one leg out is more gentle on the back and just one way to make a change. And you could alternate which leg is out. Another example of ways to use your bed. I kneel beside it using a pillow to support my knees. Not everybody's knees would be great for this. Again, I could then prop my monitor up and not have the best choice at my elbows, but a better choice at my neck. Or if I had a separate keyboard, I could prop my monitor up on something and have my keyboard where it is. So that might be the best investment for someone that has all these different positions, a separate monitor and a wireless keyboard, so that you can position the things in 2 places, and maybe a laptop is no longer the best choice for you. Then I'm propped up on my stomach. I have a pillow underneath me for support. You could do that with or without a pillow. Some people might look at that and go, no way, no how, I can't imagine spending time there. Other people, some, not everyone, who experience sciatica, this is actually for some people a sciatica relief position. So it might be great for you to spend time there. But even if you're kind of changing positions, you've got one quick task and I'm going to work 10 minutes like this, it's a change, right? So as long as if you get into a position and it's uncomfortable immediately in your body, like if you were to choose to kneel by your bed and your knees hurt, you don't want to force that. If you lie down on your stomach and your back doesn't like it, you don't want to force that. But if it's an option in your body, you want as much variety as possible. Then we move on to the living room. And here, nowadays, I feel like everyone has oversized couches. I do as well. And yet I would wear a petite pant. So I've got these short little legs. I needed 3 of my couch pillows in order to get my feet on the floor, not dangling. So I used all 3 pillows to prop me up. Again, since I'm stuck on that laptop, my neck is not great, and it's going to be the choice of my neck or my elbows. It gets a little better for my neck when I get down on the floor and I end up using my couch for back support. I'm still sitting up on a pillow just to get that little lift and my hips higher than my knees. Again, I could sit legged crossed or one leg out. This is a little bit better for my neck because the chair puts a little higher, and still not terrible on my elbows. But again, variety. The other benefit of the floor one is it forces you to get up and down off the floor, and doing that a couple times a day is going to keep you stronger and more flexible in a very functional, full body way. All right, options for the dining room office. So if all I have is a dining room chair and I don't have a standard office chair, I can use a pillow, because sitting on a hard surface for a long time is actually not the greatest choice. It can make things uncomfortable. So a pillow is always a nice touch. When I'm sitting cross-legged in the seat, which I think, we're so often as a kid told not to put our feet on the seats, but if you kick your shoes off, it's certainly an option. And then I can use the back of the chair as back support. In the middle picture, I'm using boxes, and I have gotten my monitor up higher and a wireless keyboard so that my hands can be in a better position. And my screen is now better. To get the best angle for my eyes, those boxes would have to go even higher, but I'm just using old empty Amazon boxes. In the third picture, this is what I was saying. I was going to mention the chair a little bit. What I don't have here is back support. Again, okay for a part of the time. You can have variety and change it up. But you'll notice I've rotated the chair so that the corner is in between my legs. My legs are a little bit wider. None of us can sit upright as easily when we have our thighs off the front of a square or round chair, even if it's an ergonomic cushioned office chair. It just, the pressure of that chair on the thighs gets in the way of us sitting taller. So if you happen to be watching this now from an office chair or a chair that has a square, try rotating it. See how that feels in your body when you put the point between your legs. And notice if you scooch to the front, you want to be fully supported. So those bony landmarks in your butts, your sit bones, you want them on the chair for sure. But the point comes between the legs, and notice if that enables you to actually sit taller and more comfortably when your thighs are not blocked by the chair itself. Also, most chairs, they carve out, office chairs and dining room chairs, it's like they carve out a little butt print, and it's so nice, although I don't know why they think our butts can't squish in all sorts of directions. But what it does is subtly make your glutes lower than your knees, which we know is one of the worst things we can do, to sit for a prolonged period like that with the hips below the knees at an office chair. Not to be confused with a squat. It is okay to do a squat and come down and bring the hips down lower, you know? And if we were a culture that spent more time like that, our bodies would be more comfortable in that position, but we are not. And so it's not a great position for our bodies. If I have to use my kitchen, so if you want to do some standing, your kitchen counter is probably the tallest, so you'd need the fewer boxes to get your monitor up high enough for you to see. But what you're seeing here is I've grabbed a cereal box and I'm using that to get my computer higher. And for variety, I pulled out a small step stool that I already keep in my kitchen so I can reach things on high shelves, and I could put one foot under it or I could put the other foot under it. And just throw in variety with anything you have, right? Even if you have a sit-stand desk at work, that was all the rage a few years ago, is if standing is just fine. Sitting is not bad for us. It's only bad for us because we do it 8 hours a day. But if we stand in the same position for 8 hours a day, it's just challenging on the body in a different way. So you always, always, always want to throw in variety where you can. Even if you're standing at a desk, you want to shift your weight into one foot, shift your weight into the other foot, stand equally on both feet. Variety, variety, variety. You can make it up as you go, right? It doesn't have to be anything I pictured here. There are plenty of other ideas that could give you options. Any questions from here, or points you'd want to make, or things you saw and you said, hey, I wouldn't have thought this would be a good choice? We can talk about that. Anything that stood out to you that you thought, oh, that would be a good one to incorporate, and I can make that change? And
I wonder about the picture the third picture there with your one leg up. I always thought that, then you're leaning on one leg more than that wasn't a good thing to do. Is that not true?
yeah, I mean, it wouldn't be a good thing for me to do that for 8 hours, but it's okay for me to do that.
Switch back and forth.
Yeah. So, and everybody's body might be different. You might, again, get in that position and go, what was she talking about? This is so uncomfortable to have all this weight in my leg. You might try the other leg and be like, oh, but that one's fine. And if you get into any of these positions and say, nope, not for me, that's also fine. But it's okay to try different positions. It doesn't have to be the traditional thing you've seen. Because again, it's not the sitting that's bad. It's not the standing on one leg that's bad. It's not the standing that's bad. It's the same position or a repeated movement for hours of our day. The body wants variety. It wants to do different things. Otherwise, it tries again to set you up for success, which once you have to change position winds up being a failure. Any other questions?
I don't have the option of working on a laptop. I've got the equipment from my office, so it's 2 monitors, regular monitors, and there's a desktop under the desk, the computer, but I have to work on these 2 monitors. And I have a keyboard under. At work I have ways to adjust the monitors so that my neck, you're trying to keep your posture, but you also don't want to keep your neck looking at the monitors. I can't change anything. This is the equipment I have to work with.
Right. And so it depends what you need to do, like whether you need always both those monitors at the same time because you're looking at 2 things. And then the truth is, what I might suggest is, if it didn't take too much time and it was feasible, change your situation weekly, right? So if you're finding you're always kind of like looking this and then this way, put the monitor on the other side so that the next week you're turning your head in the other direction, or put one monitor above the other. So it's not that you're always doing this, but that week to week you give yourself a different position. Or on a Monday, get the monitors higher and prop your keyboard up and stand for 1 week and decide what's realistic for how often you will change your setup. But if it's possible, try to reposition the monitors, even if it's just a subtle change, so that you're not always looking here.
I just don't have that option in the space I have. Like at work, that we had a crank up desk, and there's all sorts of things I could do to change things up. And every time I get up and I walk around my house, every 40 half hour to an hour, like every day. I walk, every between I walk, but I don't have the option with the space I have to move anything.
Yeah, so I would say if you're stuck by that small space, then I think you're already onto something. Taking regular breaks, or getting up to walk, or even we're going to go over some exercises you can do from your chair or from standing at your desk for your neck, for everything, throwing that in more regularly. The second you get a twinge of pain, ideally even before pain, but I think that's going to be your saving grace. If you are really limited, nothing can change about the office space you have. Throwing in more movement and getting up, which you've already started to cue into, is going to be your lifesaver. And I mean, that's okay. This is the reality of what we have. We work with what we have, and we can only change it to the degree we can change it. So we find the option that's best for us. I think it's positive that you've already started to turn to that, because some people are very resistant to throw movement into their day.
Well, even when I was at work, I used to walk every time I finished an assignment, because I'm a pediatrician. I'm a doctor, and I'm working as a consultant for the state. And I used to say, well, this is like prevention for pulmonary embolus. You got to get up and you got to move.
Yeah,
And
it's good for us, and it helps us think better.
doing it.
So you come up
Yeah.
with better ideas when you get up and move. So any boss should want, you got to get your work done, but should want people to move. We get more creative. The blood to the brain flows better when we move. If you're stuck on an idea, move, move, move. One move you can do is super simple. So whether you're on the floor or you're working in the bed, it's called constructive rest. The constructive rest position is the one on the left. You're lying on your back with your knees bent and the feet on the floor. So anyone who mentioned this stiffening upon standing, this is actually a great position, because it's one of the few positions you can get in that allows your hip flexors to relax. And when you have that stiffening upon standing, again, it's the fight between your hip flexors and your glutes, your quads, and your hamstrings. Your hip flexors are almost always on. They're the muscles right in the front of your pelvis. Some actually connect to your low back and then attach to your thigh in front. In constructive rest, they can come to ease. They can't come to ease at sitting. They can't come to ease in standing. So lying on your back, knees bent, feet on the floor, taking some deep breaths, a useful tool. And it's not even movement. It's just giving your body a moment to relax. In the next position, I add a twist to it, because that can feel great on your back. You can drop the knees to one side, drop them to the other, keep them in motion like windshield wipers. So lots of options there. But constructive rest is so simple. And again, ideally on a firm surface like the floor, but if you're working in your bed or it's easier, you can totally do it from there. And then we're going to break down a few exercises. So actually, for this part, I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that I can make sure you can see me better. We'll come back to this in a second, but I would like to be able to see you guys and know what you can see of me. So multiple people said neck pain, neck bothering them at the end of the day or throughout the day. Lots of things you can do for neck pain. So you can take little breaks. All neck exercises really should be small. These are small little muscles. But if you want to join me on these, go ahead. You can just start by doing a head nod, nodding the chin up and down. And try to breathe while you do that. And again, any move we add today that doesn't feel good in your body, know that you don't have to do that. You can also look straight ahead and, like you're saying no, go from side to side. But it's a big exaggerated no. You're going as far as you can without feeling strain, and then going to the other side. Inhaling and exhaling. Then go comfortably to one side, and we can do what we call these micro moves. So you're looking off to one side, but it's comfortable, and you do little tiny head nods like you're saying yes, and little tiny no's. And then you can do that to the other side. So go look towards the other side and little tiny yeses. You're moving an inch or two up and down. And little tiny no's. Then gaze back to center, and you're going to bring one ear to your shoulder. And then try that to the other side. And of course, you're taking some deep breaths here. So you can throw this in when you're stuck on an idea, when you're waiting for something to load up, right? Little movements that you can throw in. And then you can look straight ahead, and we're going to do some shoulder moves. So you can slide your shoulders up and down. You can have your hands free while you do that. You can also try the same move with your hands on top of your head. And just notice which one feels better in your body. If you do hands on top of the head, try not to pull your elbows wide. Let them fall comfortably sort of in front of you. And then you do that shoulder shrug. Again, variety or whichever one feels better. Relax the arms, and you can do shoulder rolls. So you're bringing the shoulders forward, up, and back. And then you can reverse directions. Inhaling and exhaling. From here, you can put your fingertips on your shoulders, and you can circle from the elbow. And you could do both together, or let's try it when we go backwards, do one at a time. And when you do one, now it starts to generally get a little twist in your torso, and that's okay. You can let that happen. Let's do that to the other side. So you're going to go backwards, but now you're allowing for that twist. So if you do both arms together, you'll lose the twist. If you do one at a time, you get that little extra movement in your spine. And then from here, you can do big arm circles. You reach the arms up and then press down like a snow angel, or if it feels okay, just make big sweeping circles. And whether you're going forward or back, we'll do both directions. But again, try one arm in the other direction, and it'll lead to that little rotation, which is okay. So you can add a twist and an arm circle. Let's try the other side, letting that twist come into play. And again, you're feeling out what feels okay in your body and only picking the ones that feel good, right? The body's getting stiff from work, so you're trying to give it pleasurable things. Less people mention the wrist, although when we were tuning in, there is a little sewer and a knitter. So for wrist pain, you can act like you're flicking water off your fingers, and that helps loosen up the wrists. Or you can make fists and do full circular motions on the wrist. And all of these moves are just the tip of the iceberg. There's so many more moves you could do. If you have one you like better, go ahead and play with that, and then you'd circle in the other direction. So for back pain, lots of options. Again, depending on what's going on in your back, you might actually like the propped up position that I was working on my laptop for a bit. Otherwise, you can do a pretty basic side bend, and you can start to stretch from side to side. Now you can use your own chair. So I'm putting my bottom hand on my chair and stretching over. So for that QL problem, a side bend stretches your obliques, but it also will stretch that QL a little bit. So if the QL is bothersome, you might want to incorporate a side bend regularly throughout the day, among other exercises that would be beneficial. And then we can do spinal rotation. So you'd reach your hands out in front of you, and you're going to reach one arm back as far as you can and look back to that arm, let your chest open, and then come back to center. And then rotate to the other side and back to center. Now you can do this standing. You could do this lying on the floor on your side, or you can stay in your chair. But you want to keep your hips stable. So you want to open through the chest, but not let your hips rotate with you. So the hips stay forward and you open through that chest. And now we've got movement through the chest, but also the low back. Another one for the low back that you can start to do from your chair. So I'm just going to tilt this way so you can see my hips and pelvis. I'm in my chair and I'm going to do a pelvic tilt. I'm going to tuck the tailbone between my legs and then stick it out. You can do this standing with a bent knee. You can do this lying on your back. So if you've gone into constructive rest, or you can do this in your chair. And that means if you're starting to get tightness and rigidity in those hips and that low back, this movement just forces them to relax and engage. Relax and engage. And so you're forcing movement there so they can't just start to grip and tighten on you. From there, we're going to come to standing for a few moves. So I'm going to stand up. I'm going to move my chair out of the way. And again, if you'd like to participate in this, you can. What I need you guys to see are my hips. So I'm standing with my legs about hip distance apart. and I've got a slight bend in my knees. So I'm slightly bending my knees so it's soft, and that knee bend is going to allow me to sway my hips side to side like a dog wagging a tail. Again, if you like it, it's a good one for you. If you don't love it, you don't have to do it. There's too many options of movements to make yourself pick a choice that doesn't feel good in your body when the goal is to help the body feel better. Then you're going to straighten the legs. You're going to stand with wider legs, so legs shoulder width apart, and you're going to circle your pelvis like you are tracing a hula hoop. Inhaling and exhaling, and then reverse directions. This is generally one people usually really enjoy. So you could stand up for a bit, right? You're in that, you've got the 2 monitors, the small space, you're very limited. Stand up, do some hip hula hoops. Because they're really working so much of your body. Every part of you is actually getting a little movement here. A standard hip flexor stretch. This is a great one for anyone who, again, is sitting all day or said that they have the issue with things are getting tight when they stand up. So you have a nice wide stance. Your feet are far apart. Actually, I wonder if I can rotate you here a little bit and you'll be able to see more of me. Welcome to my actual studio here. So for a standing hip flexor stretch, feet are nice and wide. All 10 toes are forward. Back heel is lifted off the floor. It's like you're about to do a lunge position. You tuck your tailbone between your legs like you've been a bad dog. Now, if you have a tight hip flexor in that back thigh, you might already feel it. But if you want more of a stretch, you bend your front leg as much as you need to feel a deeper stretch through the front of your back leg. These are those hip flexors we've been talking about, the top of your quad into the front of your pelvis. For some people, you might feel the tightness in your lower abdomen. And then we'll do the same thing on the other side. So all 10 toes forward, your other leg is back, heel is lifted. Always remember, tuck the tailbone like you've been a bad dog. Then bend that front knee, and you're looking for a stretch in the front of your back leg. Inhaling and exhaling while you hold that for a beat. And then release. You can do that stretch, I'll come back around here, 3 times and hold for 15 to 30 seconds. That's the perfect amount of time to hold a stretch. They don't know whether 15 or 30 seconds is better. So if you don't love the stretch, 15, come out of it, hold it again, up to 3 times. If you love the stretch, stay in it for 30 seconds. If you hate counting, do it for breaths, 3 breaths, 5 breaths, 8 breaths. Pick how many breaths you want to take. No one really mentioned discomfort in the feet, but if you get a rolling pin to keep under your desk or a small soft ball like a squash ball, you can give yourself a foot massage on and off all day. And that's not just for the feet. That'll stimulate your fascia and potentially help with blood flow coming back up to your whole body. So there can be lots of extra benefits to that as well. All right, I'm going to go back to sharing my screen unless anyone has any questions.
There's one in the chat. Are there any movements to avoid for a weak SI joint?
So I would start with anything that bothers you. And for SI joint pain, that can be different for different people. Sometimes things like twisting. So if like, the funny thing about the SI joint is it's not consistent. What gives some people relief is painful to the others. So those hula hoops, sometimes with someone with SI joint pain feels great. Others, there's always a point where there's pain, in which case I would avoid that. So I would generally, with SI joint pain, stay away from anything that causes pain. But one that for most people with SI joint pain is positive, even if you only do it on one side. So you'd be sitting at your desk chair. Let's say your SI joint pain is on your right side. You would bring your right leg up on the chair, if you can see that, right? So this chair doesn't have a lot of space, but if you had more space, it would be helpful because I have to have my leg really in here. And then you rotate away from your bent leg and you can use that chair. If that feels good and gives you relief, great. You can also try rotating towards the bent knee and see which position gives you more relief. So again, you might only do one side, right? SI joint pain, the right leg is bent, and then try rotating to both sides and see what feels better. And that might just be a good relief position for you. But for SI joint pain, it's not that I'd stay away from anything. It's more what I would choose to do to help support the pain. And so that's the same thing, like if you find putting more weight on one leg, I was saying like you could stand on one leg. Chances are with SI joint pain, weight on both legs is going to be more comfortable because that weight shift, the kind of shifting into it kind of puts pressure on it. Definitely hips higher. A cat stretch would be great for SI joint pain. So when you get on all fours, you round and unwind, but don't unwind too much and arch the back. So really, it's more finding the supportive exercises for the SI joint pain. Any other questions? Okay.
Nothing in the chat right now.
Okay, I'll go back to the screen share here. So we just went through exercises for the whole body. Some of you already mentioned this, but there's so many times to sneak in movement. If you're waiting for a file to load, when you get frustrated or stuck on a problem, sometimes we can like spiral and be like, we're really, really stuck. But if you go out and walk outside, you get some fresh air, you get revitalized, the brain gets better oxygen, both from the movement and the fresh air, super helpful. You can set a timer. So again, you were asking how often, every 45 minutes or not, you pick the time frame. You're at home, have it be a perk where you can do laundry on your workday, and that's your excuse to get up. You hear the dryer go off or the washer and you turn over the laundry. Not because you're trying to cheat the office, but because it's worthwhile for you to get up and move and find tasks that take 5 minutes or less that you can get up. Plus, you know, sometimes you have to squat for the laundry or reach in. They can be full body movements. The pain can be a really useful tool to make you notice we need a change, but ideally, you want to add movement before you're in pain. We don't want to wait till we're in pain to need to move or make a change for our home office. You want to try to remember to drink water. You might have fallen out of some of your patterns. You might have started a new pattern, so maybe you're drinking more water than you did at the office. But water is key for lubricating your joints. It hydrates the tissues of our body. It helps us regulate our body temperature and maintain our blood pressure. Also, we can actually confuse what we think is hunger pain for thirst. So if you drink, it might reduce your snacking. So if you are one of the many people who might have put on a few pounds in COVID, both because we've been eating, because we've been stressed, or because we've been less active, hydrating better might ward off a little bit of snacking. And of course, it motivates you to get up and relieve your bladder. So it throws in some movement. This picture here, what you see in the white on this guy's back, so you can see his lats. Those are kind of the reddish muscles and his glutes, but there's sort of this diamond of white. Fascia is your connective tissue. That white stuff is his fascia. Fascia is so fluid based, and when people have back pain, they think their muscles hurt. So your QL might be injured, but the fascia, the connective tissue around that QL, takes longer to heal than the muscle, and it might be strained too. And the muscles need water, but your fascia needs water even more. So when people are in pain, hydrating can be really, really helpful. We don't always think of that as a tool to relieve our pain, but our body needs to be well hydrated. For eye strain, there's a lot you can do. One is to consider adjusting the blue tint on your phone. You can Google how to do that because every phone would do that. You could buy a screen that covers the blue tint on your monitor. You can get these orange glasses that help with blue tint, but for some people, the blue tint gives them headaches, it disrupts sleep. So if you buy a cheap pair of $12 glasses and you notice that it feels better, then you might invest in a better screen that covers the blue, that takes out the blue tint on your monitor. Or more comfortable, more expensive glasses if you notice a difference. But start with on Amazon, you can get like $12 blue tint glasses. The glasses themselves are orange. You can make sure you adjust your monitor position. Ideally, you want to be 20 to 40 inches away from your monitor and at eye level. So 20 to 40 inches away would be ideal. You don't want to be this close to your monitor. You don't want to be so far away you're squinting. So that distance matters too. We already talked about glare, but one way to reduce eye strain is to look out a window, focus on an object 20 feet away for 20 seconds. We're so close to our monitors that we're not good at looking in the distance, and that can just help relieve your eyes actually to focus on something that is further away from you. And then, of course, we can do a whole bunch of little eye exercises. So I'm going to stop this share again so that you can see me. But one eye exercise is to keep, and actually on my website, I have a video. They're actually balance exercises, but eye exercises are shown to help with balance. So I have more than even this on my website from a recent segment I did on NBC. So if you keep your head still and you move your eyes left and right, it's actually working them, but it can help relieve them from focusing on the screen. Then you can move the eyes up and down, and you can make circles and reverse directions of those circles. And you should feel your eyes work. Like, you should feel the muscles in your eyes moving to make that happen. And of course, you could just do a really big blink, like widen your eyelids and release, widen and release. So just a few options for some eye strain and trying to relieve eye strain. Which again, I think we don't always notice that or recognize that that's part of an ergonomic office space as well. If you're not going to be able to buy, or your office is not able to buy an expensive ergonomic options for you, look at what you have at home. We talked about these throughout, but if you can get a sit-stand desk, that's great. If you get a good desk chair, but if not, the stools, pillows, Amazon boxes, cereal. I mean, this is a corn mix box. A stability ball is a fabulous tool. Just make sure it's burst proof. My dad is now retired, but for years he worked at a large company in Connecticut, and he had some pain, and I said, really, you should sit on a stability ball at work. So he brought one in, he sat on it, and the next day a memo went out to the whole staff, no stability balls allowed at this office. And I said to my dad, what? That's crazy. They don't know about ergonomics. That's not a good choice. They should be encouraging people to sit on stability balls. You should go back in and say something. 2 days later, the ergonomics department from his company said, we absolutely do allow stability balls. And I said, see, Dad, it's fine. Bring it back in. And he did. He enjoyed sitting on it because you could move around really easily. He could get a lot of hip movement. So again, if you want to make a small investment, a stability ball would be $40. Make sure it's burst proof, because my father did not. Both his worst disaster and the company's, which why they wanted to say no balls, is that his ball burst beneath him and he fell. Luckily, he was fine. It was not an issue, but it's a good reminder to get a burst proof ball. So our key takeaways from tonight: you may not have the perfect position. Some of you pointed that out. Like, this is the space I have. I have the 2 monitors. I don't have a laptop. I can't move around. It's okay. It's not the end of the world. It's going to be more important for you to get up and move. You can't change positions necessarily, but you can get up and move. You can throw in some stretches. So change positions if you can. Stretch when you can. Don't wait for pain. Drink plenty of water. Take time to get outside, right? It's going to encourage you to get dressed. It's going to invigorate you, especially if it's cold on these beautiful sunny days. The sun is huge for our mental health. Look for those right angles, 90 degrees or greater at the hips, knees, and elbows. And ideally, you want your gaze straight ahead. And then if you are interested or realize tomorrow you have a question, these are all the ways you can get in touch with me. But otherwise, I am here if you guys do have questions, because I know that was a lot of information.
I have a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
As far as like furniture, as like sofas, is there anything that you should look for if you're going to buy new furniture that would give you more support?
I mean, to me, the big one is, again, it depends on how tall you are, and you might have other people in your household, right? If you live with someone really tall and
That's
you're
my
shorter,
problem.
yeah, and so it's hard. Then I'd say maybe get a chair for you and a chair for the person you live with, but you can always adjust, right? Like I showed, my couch was oversized. That's not great for me to sit on ever, even prior to this, when I was just like having friends over and hanging out on the couch. My feet cannot touch the floor if I'm sitting against the back of that couch. So I use pillows, right? So you can find adjustments to that, or be like, right, this is your comfy chair. This is my comfy chair. I actually think everything is so oversized now. It takes effort to find a chair for like a normal sized human being with short little legs,
Mm-hmm.
And then it's a little bit comfort, but if it's really squishy, chances are your hips are going to go beneath your knees. So that couch that you'd want to like snuggle up on and watch TV and be totally relaxed on probably isn't ideal for sitting in the office, but something that's soft but has a little more support so that it holds you up would probably be ideal. But again, it might have multiple functions. I hate to tell you, like, invest in this perfect couch for sitting and working, and then you wind up back in the office, you know? So I would say get the couch you want and make it work for you. You could always, for now, put a piece of plywood under the pillow you're sitting on to give yourself support, and then take it out when you maybe don't need to work from home anymore.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions?
I don't see any, but I think we've all learned a lot tonight, so thank you very much. I know I'm planning on making some changes tomorrow at my work desk here, so I appreciate it. We all appreciate it.
Yeah, and thank you guys for having me. And remember, like, you don't have to make all the changes. Make a couple, right? And see how they work, and then adjust them and change week to week. Throw in a different change each time.
Right.
The reality is we're never going to be perfect, so we do the best we can.
Great advice. Okay, well, thank you very much, everybody. Thanks for coming, and thank you, Maggie, for teaching us so many things tonight.
Thank you guys. Thanks for tuning in.
Take
Thank
care,
you.
everybody.